Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about We Hunt Together Season 2, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, first and foremost, there's everything with Freddie and Henry, and I love that the guilt for what happened to the real Frederica is starting to get to her. I don't know whether it's just like the fact is that she's around her brother so much and now she's in love with her brother, and it's like maybe the guilt is finally weighing on her consciousness after everything that happened with Sheila, because killing Sheila is like the last tie to her past that's connected to all of that, because everyone else, well, other than Henry, everyone else kind of associate with that. It's gone. Frederica's gone, now Kian's gone, so, but it's interesting that it's now bubbling to the surface. Now, maybe she felt guilt back then, I don't know, but she didn't seem like she carried that guilt last season, but maybe she secretly was. Once again, it's one of those retroactive type of things, but it makes you wonder, because obviously she's saying like, right, we should do this kind of getaway where we kind of honored the real Freddie and everything, because it's like, right, the anniversary of her death is coming up, and so we should do something. And she presented Henry with that butterfly hair clip, and it was like, oh, and just once again, everything in the episode, everything for a while has been kind of pointing to like, oh, he seems a little weird, a little off. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, considering his circumstances of, yeah, when he was younger, his sister ended up killing herself, that of course that wouldn't sit well with him. He probably wouldn't be the most well-adjusted person and stuff like that. But either way, I love while that's happening, they're planning that out. Lola shows up. The fact of the matter is, Freddie tries to get rid of the evidence. I think the necklace, the ring, the letter, and the finger. Tries to flush it. No go on the finger. Second thing I've recently watched was trying to flush something fleshy down the toilet and it not being super successful at all. In fact, backfiring. Well, it backfires in this case too. And so Freddie, so that's a combination of many different things. It's like it's a dead severed finger that you have to I was like legitimately I was like, I don't know if I was like, are you gonna swallow it? Because I was about to say like, is that, I was like, out of any other alternatives of where that finger could have gone, which I'm like, yeah, there's a part of me that's like, you don't think she's going to try it? It's like, no, she didn't hide it in the other two places she could have hid it. But I'm like, it's like, is that the more sanitary? I don't know. Luckily, you didn't use the toilet beforehand, because otherwise that would have sucked you out of. But either way, she has to choke that down, and then she's getting interrogated by Lola, and the entire time she's sick to her stomach. I was like, oh, that super can't be good for your stomach. But they're trying to test her because they're like, right, if she says no about the letter, we got her, because regardless of anything, she's lying about this letter, so they will have her cornered to some extent. But then, like, she wasn't really thinking clearly because she was too busy, like, about the vomit from the finger. Went to the bathroom, vomited it up, then kind of ended up putting it in her pocket. Came back refreshed, and it's like, hey! And they're like, did you receive anything weird or anything? And she's like, no. And then she looked at the other guy in the room. He's the one that really told her, like, well, actually, there was a letter I got. I was like, damn it! Once again, you were so close to getting her. But Freddie, it wasn't even, because Freddie knew, like, the way Lola was questioning her, and that guy, I think his name was Ryan, I think he's the reason why she figured something was up, the look on his face, that it's almost like, oh, okay, I guess we got her. But him looking like that, it's like, wait, she's like, they know something I don't know, they might be, because the fact is, Lola keeps pushing this, and it's like, she knows how, like, intent Lola is to take her down, so it's like, yeah, I did get that letter, oh, must have been, it's like, why, was it important? You know, it's like being smug, so now it doesn't necessarily help them, because now by acknowledging the letter, like, it doesn't, like, they needed her to kind of lie about it, because at least then they could, like, hey, like, you know, but by admitting that she has a letter, it kind of screws them over a little bit. But God, I'm blanking on her name, because her name doesn't come up that often in the show. That person that Jackson brought in, who's kind of like the kind of understand this psychopathy of the killer and stuff, is saying that whoever it is in love with Freddy, to the point that if that love is threatened, they might even, because for them it's like this perfect world they've got for Freddy, and it's like, you know, and it comes down to the killer fears rejection. And if the killer feels like they're being rejected by Freddy, because everything is like, oh, like this is all a cat and mouse game to see if they could, see if Freddy's really someone, is a person that can really truly be themselves with. And if Freddy kind of breaks that, then the killer might actually hurt Freddy in the process, so. At the same time, this is all going down. Jackson's in a position where he could end up getting suspended because the cop is going to file charges, and it's beyond even Susan's hands right now. But even she's like, why didn't you tell them that you were a cop? He's like, why would I? You know, it's like, right, like my circumstances, it shouldn't matter me being a cop. That, you know, it's like, it is what it is, and it, like, you know, and because the typical thing would be like, hey, I'm a cop. But I think maybe it's just because, for one, Jackson has too much, you know, I guess pride would be the word. It's just like, right, like, I'm not going to use my badge as a get out of jail free card. Like, yeah, I messed up. I had to suffer the consequences of it. But also, you know, I'm not going to try and weasel my way out of this. Like, right, I was drunk. I wasn't in the best state of mind. I was just angry about everything. We've seen time and time, ever since last season, like, he, burying that anger kind of comes out in some way or form, and it just tends to end up being just as destructive. But he's kind of getting, potentially going to get suspended. So we'll see how that plays out. And he kind of accepts it as it is, even later on telling Lola, like, right, I actually felt this almost peace and relief upon hearing that. He did come home at one point in time, and his son was waiting. It's like, oh, is it true what mom said? And I was like, oh, what did your mom say? And his son is like, I hate her. And he's like, I know, son, but I will always love you, just like your mom will always love you. So it is easy in that situation to be like, yep, your mom's a terrible person, but to be like, no, your mom is still your mom, and despite whatever happens, we will always love you. That kind of matters first and foremost. So I think that's kind of an important thing, you know. I mean, this is the opportune time to be petty, like, especially considering the circumstances. So, either way, Lola got a visit from Liam, who wants to help, and but Lola's kind of not really giving him the time. And then ultimately, he's like, yeah, if, you know, I'm close to Freddy, so we could use that to our advantage. And she's like, we're not in this together. And he kind of, you know, breaks it down by being like, you're sitting here in your fancy fucking, like, officer chair, which she's like, no, it's just a chair from IKEA, nothing fancy about it. But also, he's like, right, I have my issues, like, I'm trying to do this for my daughter, like, you wouldn't understand that. But she's like, I'm a heroin addict. And he was like, what? So he's like, I was in an accident, killed 2 people, didn't really go into, like, the real, you know, sad thing about it being, one of them was a little girl, and there was almost like a little bit of an, you know, you can almost equate, it's not a 1-for-1, but you can kind of equate it with the whole, Liam's daughter situation. But for Lola, it's like, right, she's 10 months, sober, and she's kind of, you know, handling it day by day. She goes on runs and stuff. So, and he was like, Jesus, Lola. She's like, you know what I'm going to do? Don't even try and pretend like, you know, try to make this up for me. Don't even apologize. Like, I'm just going to turn my back and you walk away. And we'll just kind of forget about this. And I was legitimately like, oh, I hope nothing happens to Liam, because I don't want this to be the last moment between them or something like that, because it just feels like that's foreshadowing, like, Liam might not survive this series, and that's going to be the last interaction between him and Lola, and she's going to have so much regret about it. I mean, that's what sent her inspired. Well, it was, you know, one that, like, medication for the accident, but eventually slipping into, like, her own self-hate and regret about everything that sent her, like, down the drug route. So if something happens to Liam, I can definitely see her spiraling and you know, giving up her sobriety and end up kind of going back to drug. I could definitely see that being a thing. Hopefully neither comes to pass, but it definitely seems like they're potentially setting that up. So all the while all of this is happening, well, I'll go ahead and focus on the Jackson and Lola's situation, but because there was a notepad from Freddy's place. They ran it, and it turns out it's connected to a storage unit. Lola goes there. Turns out that the storage unit was paid by Lester. Well, she goes to Jackson about this, and Jackson kind of doesn't want to help at first because he's like, right, you should be talking to me because I'm kind of off the case right now. But it turns out the night of the day Shannon died, which I guess just because it didn't seem like nighttime, but I guess it was like evening going into nighttime. I think it's kind of like the cloudiness that is like, at least like the stereotype about London being a very cloudy place and stuff like that. Regardless, it just didn't seem like nighttime to me, but it was for, I guess, like close to like evening time and stuff. But her murder was like 8 o'clock, and turns out Lester's wife covered for him. They weren't. The alibi isn't rock solid. He has a 5-hour window he could have slipped out. So I don't know whether it's like some mysterious person picked her up. So I'm wondering, like, is this some, like, what's that all about? Jumping ahead a little bit, the Robert thing, that's why I'm like, was that him? But what's the connection there? Like, does he have ties to those two? Like, yeah, is Lester into some stuff, but maybe, because once again, the one that got away on the bike, maybe that was Lester. I don't know. But the question then becomes like, okay, so, but what's the connection? Like, why would is Samantha, like, was it like they're having open relationship type of thing, and she was going off with someone that serve as their alibi, or what? Like, were they not the innocent people they claimed? I don't know what to really make of that. Maybe we'll find out next episode. But yeah, he had a 5-hour window, but Jackson kind of wanted nothing to do with this. You know, he's like, right, he's saying that the justice system almost kind of isn't fair, because he's like, what evidence do we have? You know, evidence that doesn't really matter or whatever. And he's like, I'm not talking about fingerprints. He's talking about the everything that, and he talked a little bit about this last season, I believe, or maybe it was earlier this season. Either way, the whole idea of like, right, when we're judging someone for doing something that criminal, it's like, right, we expect them to kind of have like a rational mind in what they did, but it's like, yeah, it's small things that led up to that anytime, you know, it comes to something like this, we never really think about, you know, what led up to it, you know, it like that. Nothing's just an isolated thing of like, oh, you did this bad thing. It's an isolated incident on. So it's like, no, things build up to it, which I think sometimes comes into that context. Sometimes comes into the conversation, but I think other times it doesn't. But for Jackson, you know, because it's like, what do we really do? Yes, we're hunting a serial killer this time, but what about afterwards? And for Lola, it's like, well, I don't fucking know. She's like, I try to do my best. She's like, some days I feel like I do more harm than good, but that's what our job is, to seek justice. And so there's like, right, if you don't want to help Jackson, then fine. But he does come through in the end when he kind of washes up, and he ends up talking to the at Lester's place, like the person, the caretaker or something like that, ended up interviewing her. At the same time this ends up happening, we find out that Lester and his wife are both dead. They had another place, and they both, quote-unquote, killed themselves, left a note, matched the handwriting, and you're like, well, that's not as clear-cut, because it's like, do you have proof that he actually wrote it? Because who's to say the real, which ends up being the case, the real killer just faked it, which I'm like, not too surprised by that. So that's kind of neatly tied up in a bow. At the same time that's happening, Freddie and Henry go on that boat. He ended up even admitting that his mom wasn't too happy about hearing about that. Probably not only like, are you going on the boat that's named Frederica, because their mom had decided on that, but also he's going with Freddie, Lily, so there's a double blow in that. It's like, right, you're got the nerve to be on the boat with my son, on the boat named after my daughter, which, once again, she strongly believes Freddie had something to do with, but no one else really did. And I love the imagery of like when you're looking at Freddy's reflection, it's kind of like blurred down the middle and you got the both sides of her. So it almost kind of reflects like kind of like what she's dealing with the whole, right. She's Freddy staring at Freddy, thinking about Freddy. It's just like there's layers to the whole thing. By Freddy, one of those Freddys, I meant like the boat being Frederica and then the other Freddy being the real Frederica she killed all those years ago. But, like the guilt was kind of getting to her, and she's like, right, I want to tell you the truth because I love you. It's like, well, once again, you always have to put an asterisk beside it. You don't love him. You want to love him, and once again, you with the Baba situation, you're like, isn't that enough? Wanting to love someone, but sadly, she was like, I want to tell you the truth, but he was wearing his headphones, and she kind of backed out at the last second. Then he hears on the phone about Sheila, which, yes, that's her name. I couldn't remember. I knew it was Sheila, or I'd thrown it out last episode. I was like, I couldn't remember if it was Sheila or something else, but yes, it's Sheila. The moment he found out that Sheila was dead, because I guess he knew to some extent she was going to go, she went there to kill Sheila after everything she did. But hearing like, oh, you forgave her, like, okay, so you are the good person I think you are. But now it's like, oh wait, she died not too long after Freddy visited. It's that thing of, once again, people around Freddy end up dead. So I think that really kind of messed with him. He ended up accidentally cutting himself. But then he went on a run. They made sure to show you those red shoes. But it doesn't seem like Freddy really thought much of it because she was kind of certain the killer was Lester. So she didn't, at least in that scene when he was putting on the shoes going off the run, she didn't seem to take too much notice of it. Well, while they're on the boat, she was kind of taking selfies. I was like, isn't that kind of messed up considering what this trip's supposed to be about? But the selfies were an excuse so that she could take a look and see the expression on Henry's face and she could tell something's a little off. So they're talking and everything, and he reveals some interesting information that Kian and his mom were together, and Freddy's almost like, wait, what? It's like, yeah. He's like, I actually caught them having sex. He's like, yeah, actually, while I was on that little birdhouse thing, or the thing he was saying, like, you go to like watch birds and stuff. He's like, yeah, I watched mom blow him. She's like, don't, gross. And he was like, yeah, I know, it's kind of messed up. He's like, I didn't think mom really had it in her. So there's layers to that too, because Freddy, once again, Freddy didn't realize it until last season about maybe she didn't remember things. I brought this up in a previous episode that with the whole Kian thing, she didn't remember things the way they really were. Either that's just right, she was young at the time and saw things that weren't really there, and maybe she just kind of kept convincing herself over and over again over the years, like maybe she tried to legitimately justify her feelings, because it's like, right, I ended up killing Freddy because of you, because you were close to her, you did love her, like there was something going on between you two, but I loved you and I wanted you to suffer for that. So it wasn't really like, oh, something was going on between you and Freddy and you were victimizing her because she's a little girl, you were taking advantage of her. It was more so like, I was in love with you, I wanted to be that special someone, and she was, so I wanted to take her spot. So by killing her, yes, it was an argument, but on some subconscious level, she also later took her name. It's like I was trying to fill that void to some extent. But like that's why I'm like, how much is that like her remembering things that way because that's how she saw them then, or is it just her as an adult revising history to fit the narrative she had told herself all those years ago to justify what she's done? But now hearing like Ken and his mom were in a relationship, it goes like, right, there really was nothing going on. He's like, yeah, like I don't think Frederica ever knew about it. He thought like he was just being nice to her. He's like, no, he's being nice to her because he cared about our mom, so that's why he cared a lot about us. But Freddy tried to be like, no, well, that's what predators do. They get close to a parent just so they can keep the kids nearby. He's like, no, I think he genuinely liked mom, and I think that's making Freddy feel even more guilty of like, yeah, Kian became another victim because of you. It's like, once again, like I think the turmoil of like, I killed Freddy and it's your fault because I loved you but you loved her, but now it's like, oh, it wasn't even what you thought it was. So, and then there's the situation later on because Freddy she's kind of unnerved and she knows something's up with something's off about Henry, so she finds the bird mask and a knife, and she's starting to think, oh my god, he is the Birdman. So it's like, right, like you might try and... I think she was going to hurt him because it's like, oh, you, I rejected you and now you're coming after me now or something like that, or like you're trying to get me alone and you're not revealing yourself. It's because you're trying to hurt me to some extent. And he's kind of playing into the role of like, oh, but what if I was a Birdman? I'll fight back a little bit. But he's like, wait, I'm playing. He's like, right, it's just, I'm feeling all kinds of things being here on this boat at this time, so... And so Freddy kind of lets it go. But the moment they're there later on, she has that nightmare about him. I'm like, oh no, it's not going to be him. The real killer's going to show up to kill Henry, right? No, she accidentally ends up killing him, being driven kind of insane by her own guilt at the time. Accidentally runs into him and stabs him. And she's like, I'm sorry. And admits her guilt over killing the real Freddy. And she's like, if I had told you, would you have forgiven me? He's like, I still do. And then she stabbed him because, like, either she's just like, right, I believe that you are the real Birdman, or is it just like, right, I confessed to you, plus I stabbed you, so I just have to end this, and she just kills him. It's like, wow, now you're responsible for killing both of her children. It's like, you killed Frederica all those years ago, now you killed Henry. It's like, right, once again, coming full circle. Everyone around Freddy ends up dying. This time, she did, and I didn't think about it at the time while I was watching the episode, but sitting here, I'm like, right, that's the first time she's ever gotten bloody with it. Once again, technically it's the third person she killed. She killed Freddy by accident. She kind of killed Ken by accident. She kind of killed Henry by accident. It's never been fully intentional, but she did stab him, but then kind of went through with the kill, so it's technically because also, before even that, she did kill Sheila too. So that is 4 people. Sheila was the first person she intentionally killed, and I guess like going for that extra blow with Henry was her. It's like, right, it wasn't an accident, but now I'm intentionally killing you. So either way. Just interesting too, because now she's intentionally killing Henry, whereas before she did, like, it was just an argument and everything, and she accidentally killed Frederica. Either way, goes back home, gets a call from Henry's phone. Lo and behold, the real killer is revealed. It's none other than Robert. Okay, I was just spitballing. I threw that out there as a crazy theory and being like, oh, like, that seems like it could be a possibility, but I thought it was just being crazy. And as the episode went on, I was like, it's not Henry. It's all leaning towards him. And just because, once again, it's interesting because everybody associated, like, as in body, like, well, everybody as in everybody, but every body murdered victim that has been the Birdman's victim, the body has always been left behind, with the exception of Robert. We never found out what happened to his body. That's what I thought. I want to say I brought this up last episode. That's why it was so suspicious to me. So that's why I started throwing out there, oh, maybe Robert's alive and just cut off his own finger. Lo and behold, it's like sometimes the simplest explanations right in front of you, because he was the number one suspect. But that's the point, because it's like, oh, he's too obvious, so obviously it can't be him. Oh, he's so obvious because it is him, and he kind of threw in threw a wrench into everything by making himself disappear and leaving his finger behind. And I think there's a layer of, right, his fingers were fingerprinted, and they made it seem like the killer left his... That nuance there made me think that was a little weird, but I was like, I guess it's like, right, you were leaving his fingerprints behind, so you probably wouldn't know that he had been fingerprinted by the cops, but that's extra reason why he did it. I think he was just... I think he was being cheeky with that to some extent, but, maybe that's me reading too much into that. But, yeah. He went through all of this. Luckily, he didn't have to kill Henry. He would have, but now it's like, now all that time Henry and Freddy spent together might be sending him over the edge when it comes to Freddy, so he might actually try and hurt Freddy. We'll have to wait and see, but he does dispose of Henry's body for her, so that's definitely going to be interesting. I wonder, is he going to try and put this all on Freddy? I mean, he already killed, not on Freddy, but like on Henry, but with everything that's going on, like I said, what his connection is to Lester and his wife. Like, why would he be the one to pick her up and everything? I don't know. And I brought it up earlier, but I'm scared for Liam. I think maybe because Liam is someone close to Freddie, so he might be getting jealous and he might want to end up killing him. And so, like I said, I hope it doesn't end like that for Lola's sake. Not unless he tries to come after Lola and ends up going to kill Lola, but maybe Liam's at her place waiting and ends up getting killed. I don't know. Very, spoilers, kind of Trinity from Dexter-esque, where it's like, oh, there was one more twist waiting for you, Dexter Morgan, at the end of the season. That type of situation, not unless it turns into something like that. I'm so excited to see what happens. The next episode is the season finale, so it's definitely going to be interesting to get context for this Robert thing, kind of understanding maybe some of his connections and the choices he made throughout the season. And it's so interesting because, once again, Bubba was there from the very beginning. We bounced back and forth between what him and Freddie were up to, but he's been this ever present any kills and stuff. We were there along the way. Whereas, once again, Robert's identity was hidden the entire season, and there was so much subterfuge of oh, is it, could it be Liam? Could it be Henry? Could it be Lester? And it's no, or could it be Robert? Well, it can't be Robert. Well, in actuality, it actually is Robert. So, I think, once again, that just presents such an interesting, I guess they were right, we kind of did season 1 a certain way, so they wanted to go about it season 2 in a different way. So I think it's such an interesting, and it really leans into the mystery element, because it was more of a mystery of just can they figure things out, but there wasn't as much of a mystery because we as the audience got to once again see Baba and Freddie do what they did. So now it's but this season added that actual mystery element of oh, who's the Birdman? So it's going to be, like I said, interesting to see how the season wraps up and sees where all of this takes us. I am curious, will Freddie actually survive this season? She might not actually, so we'll see how that all plays out. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.